Hey, welcome to Expanded Knowledge. This is Anthony. Today we are going to look at some recent rumors and talk about UFO UAP hearings taking place this fall, possibly in September or October, November, and allegedly two different hearings. So let's get right into it here. And first of all, just for reference, we had the July 2023 last year hearing where David Grusch came out, Ryan Graves and David Fravor, the two gentlemen on the right and left there, of Grusch in the middle, both having had firsthand encounters with UFOs, and Graves having, a team of pilots regularly reporting the UFOs over and over and over again, where Fravor was the one on the right there who had the close encounter with the Tic Tac, and multiple other witnesses from the Tic Tac have verified the same thing. They have uh, electronic, readings on the object as well. Tic Tac is the case that broke in the New York Times in 2017, got the government and the public taking UFOs more seriously. So, yeah, the crazy thing is, like, we had this hearing last year, and it's been over a year now, and we haven't had another hearing. Somebody comes out and says that the government's been retrieving spaceships that are not human and bodies, and we haven't had a follow-up hearing since then, which is just crazy. And mind you, there's a whole other deeper side of Grush. It's not just some crazy guy coming out and saying it. He had to go through a whole process. He had to get his evidence submitted and looked over by the independent oversight office of the intelligence community of the United States government, which is called the Office of the Inspector General. There was a whole process. He had a 4-year investigation of evidence that took 16 months to go through and vet all his information. And then, boom, they stamped it credible and urgent. And he came forward and said what he said on the News Nation interview. And then we had the hearing like the next month, right? Which shows you the power of somebody going through the process like that and then making the claims, versus someone just kind of coming out and saying things like Jason Sands. Who else have we had? There's been a couple of other people like that. Really, yes, Lou Elizondo's book's coming out. Yes, Elizondo has played a really critical role in moving the ball forward, but nothing's like Grush has ever happened, where all he did was go through the process, have a reputable news media outlet cover it and interview him, and then within a month we had official hearings in the United States government. So yeah, we're going to look at a couple of clips here. And actually, before we get into the talk about the two new hearings, what I have here is one of the clips recently from News Nation and Ross Coulthart's show Reality Check. And they're basically talking about last year AARO, who allowed the coming out with the first official report on the historical review of UFOs and UAPs. So let's take a listen here.
Even before any of AARO's conclusions were made public, the Roswell Daily Record's UAP reporter, Toby Martinez, had low expectations.
I didn't expect anything new from the report. I figured it would say there was no, evidence of extraterrestrial life sightings, which directly goes against what David Grusch came out and testified as to last year, saying that we've recovered craft and biologics. So while I wasn't surprised, I was a bit disappointed.
Grusch, a former UAP task force representative, in a News Nation exclusive last year, the UFO whistleblower spoke about his findings and his claims the government does have proof of alien life, but they aren't disclosing it.
The head of the Pentagon's UAP investigations program, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, told Congress AARO, that's the Pentagon's UFO investigation body, has found no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity, off-world technology, or objects that defy the known laws of physics.
While a large number of cases in our holdings remain technically unresolved, this is primarily due to a lack of data associated with those cases.
Was that a lie?
Well, I know Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. I've known him for about 8 years, and I expressed some concerns to Dr. Kirkpatrick about a year ago and told him what I was starting to uncover. And he didn't follow up with me. And he has my phone number. He could have called me.
Like Grusch, the experts we spoke with in Roswell have little faith the government will ever tell us what they really found.
I don't think we're going to get answers through Arrow. I don't. I think their job is to investigate cases. I think they're only going to release ones that are easily explainable.
I still personally maintain it's a cover-up of ignorance, that they still don't have any solid answers themselves. I think that's why there's a large faction of the Pentagon that even would equate this to something almost supernatural, magical, that we can't bridge that technology. It is that beyond the pale, so to speak. So they don't know from where, from why, or from who. So what do they disclose? So I can even sympathize with their position in all this.
Yeah, so just thought I'd share that there. That's like 5 days ago from News Nation and kind of where they're taking the conversation. So yeah, just a couple things. I mean, I think it's interesting still to look at the whole role of Kirkpatrick and Grusch saying there, going back and listening, hearing Grusch saying, look, I told Kirkpatrick when I started to uncover things and he didn't do anything about it. Right. Now, the other part, the last part there, I have to question, that was Kevin Randall at the end there, or Don Schmidt, one of them. And what he's saying, right? He's saying, I think that Arrow and the Pentagon, it's a cover up of ignorance, right? This idea that they don't know what they are, and that's why they're covering it up. And I'd have to question that. Obviously, I don't know, but there's enough. I mean, there's enough out there of people making the argument that the military or some type of quasi-military and private, cabal of people have reverse engineered the technology, and there are man-made UFOs out there doing who knows what. And even if that's not the case, most are. I mean, look what David Grusch is saying, right? They've been retrieving the crashed UFOs and bodies since the 40s. And the guy there at the end is saying they don't know anything about it, and that's why they're covering it up. I think that that's a little bit of a stretch to believe, because if they've been recovering the technology and the bodies for 80 years, they got to know something. And, so I'm not so sure about that. Now, what would be nice is if we could get some hearings and see some information start to roll out. So next up, what we're going to be looking at here is new information from the Down to Earth with Christian Harloff channel. And so the gentleman on the right there is another YouTube channel called Psychoactivo. And he recently interviewed somebody named Matt Laszlo. And if you've been following the UAP subject, then you would know who he is. Basically, he goes on to Washington. He's a journalist. He goes down to Capitol Hill and asks politicians questions, and he focuses on the UAP issue as one of the issues that he focuses on, and he's made a website out of those conversations called Ask-a-Poll. So really great work that he's doing. Let's take a listen. The talk is that there may be 2 UFO hearings in this coming fall. So let's check it out.
Which makes sense. Of course. All right. So tell me a little bit more. You guys brought up and discussed the Schumer and Rounds bill. What's his overall thoughts there?
He believes that there's a possibility that Schumer is doing this just to keep his promise to Senator Harry Reid, and that he doesn't see it as involved as he was probably last year. And he also told me that this was very revealing, that the one who could make the UAPDA get gutted again is Representative Turner.
So just a little bit of information there. I mean, this idea that Schumer really is only doing this because of his relationship with Harry Reid, who passed away, And if you read Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book, Harry Reid writes the whole foreword on that. And Harry Reid was behind the 2008-2010 OSAP program, him and Senator Inouye, as well as another senator. Very interesting. You should definitely check him out if you haven't already. But this guy, he was the Senate Majority Leader, so the highest ranking senator in the majority party when he was in office. So, and Schumer was he was like a mentor to Chuck Schumer, who is the guy that, has said some pretty fascinating things publicly on the Senate floor about UAP. And yes, he headed the UAP disclosure bill, which then, yes, had all these, this whole plan for disclosure about UFOs and crash retrievals. And then it was gutted apparently by, and this is what just keeps being the word on the street, right, is by Mike Turner, one person in the government of 535, right? It's insane that one person can stop a bill from becoming a law about having disclosure about UFOs and aliens. One guy. It's nuts, man. It makes no sense whatsoever. And he's like a chairman of either the Intelligence Committee or the Armed Services Committee in the House. Even though the UAP Disclosure Act was passed unanimously in the Senate, it came up against apparently one person in the House who stopped it from, moving forward and really actually having teeth to it. So let's continue on and hear what else Matt Laszlo had to tell Pavel on the right there from the Psychoactivo podcast.
But Matt is the one guy that he really seems to me is like the only guy that is reporting on this, and talking to these people. Like when it's got to come, and I don't know if you asked through this.
Yeah. So that's just a real quick point there is that why, great for Matt Laszlo. I mean, it's awesome, right? But I think it's just insane when I zoom out and think about this whole situation. It's like you've got this one person with this sort of indie kind of DIY ask a poll website where he's a journalist. He goes, he interviews politicians, and then he puts the audio and the text on his website and has a Patreon, right? And then people on YouTube, like UFO, UAP channels that are relatively small, are covering what he says. I mean, this should be the biggest story out there. It's totally a reality changer. And it's literally, there's legislation with this kind of language about non-human intelligence, UFO crash retrievals, and the whole thing, David Grusch's claims, everything. And yet, one independent journalist is the one person going to Washington and talking to these politicians and pressuring them to, give information about what's going on. And yes, that's how it's supposed to be, right? The media, the press is supposed to be the so-called fourth estate, where they keep the government in check. They put the pressure on the government. They kind of, scrutinize the government. That's supposed to be their role in the way, that a democracy was envisioned. So I just think it's wild, but I also think it's very telling. I think it's very telling because it shows you that the media has the orders from the top of the pyramid to not focus on this. Otherwise it would be a no-brainer. I mean, talk about something that will get clicks and views. What else do you want? So it's very telling. Let's continue to watch the last couple of short clips here.
Okay, so then you would say that the biggest news here, obviously, is the fact that he's pretty convinced that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen too, and it's going to happen in September.
Yes, that's the biggest takeaway, I think. And Nancy Mace as the leading chair, that I found that really interesting.
Did he go into?
So yeah, last piece there, right? And Laszlo told Pavel that there may be 2 hearings happening in September. I mean, that would be nice. Now, what would the 2 hearings be? We've heard Senator Gillibrand talk about before. That hearing is probably not going to be anything too substantial, because she basically has said she wants Arrow to come out. It's a hearing for Arrow, and Arrow is going to come out and sit and show the public, in her words, how they're able to explain certain videos and certain data and how they're not able to explain others. Okay, so we've seen that whole dog and pony show before with the 2022 hearing, which was hilarious, when the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, speaking for the UAP Task Force, I forget his name, Scott Bray, was up there showing this phone video of like something, and they couldn't even get it on the right frame to show people. It was like ridiculous. But actually, interesting enough, and I made this video way back a year and a half ago or something. If you zoom in on that little phone video from wherever the UAP task force got it from, if you zoom in on it a lot, you actually kind of see it looks disc shaped, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, so that hearing with Gillibrand, one of these supposed two, I don't think it's going to be anything substantial. However, if it's true what Laszlo is telling people now about what he's heard, that there may be a hearing in the House as well, coming from the UAP caucus and headed by Nancy Mace, now we might have something that actually moves the needle. And why? Because, well, if you watch the July 2023 hearing, the Nancy Mace asked some very good questions. And in fact, it was her questions that I think are like the best little bite clips from that hearing. So let's take a listen here. This is 1 minute of when Nancy Mace was questioning David Grusch at the hearing last year.
You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, Biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
In efforts to cover.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much there. If we just think about each question, first of all, she asks him, has there been communication between the government and non-human intelligence, aka aliens? And Grusch could easily just have answered, I have not been made aware of any documentation of that, right? But he doesn't say that, right? The guy who submitted 4 years of investigation and evidence, whose job was to look into this and had the clearances to look into this, because that was his job on the UAP task force, which was put into law. And then his evidence was vetted for 16 months before he could come out and say these things at the hearing, right? If this guy was full of crap, I mean, wouldn't they just like stop him there and be like, yeah, no, this is inconclusive. It's not credible and urgent. So, I mean, unless it's just like this whole psychological operation that's unprecedented in history, either outcome is still just, this is like huge. Biggest story, even if it's just like all some type of elaborate scheme, which seems very unlikely given the corroboration, the other people who have come out and backed up David Grusch and all the other corroborating evidence over 80 years. But anyway, he says in that clip, that's not something I can talk about publicly. So what does that mean? He could have just said, like I said, there's no documentation that shows humans have been communicating with aliens. The government has. He says, that's something I can't talk about in a public setting. So read between the lines there. Then, of course, she asks him, were biologics recovered? And he says, yes. She says, were they non-human? He says, yes. That was the assessment of people who worked on the program and are still currently working on the program. So that means that still, as we speak here, there are projects going on where they're recovering and looking at alien bodies. And Dave Grusch has said as much to Nancy Mace under oath at the congressional hearing last year. And then later on, he's asked, okay, when can you give us this information? And he says, I'd be happy to meet you in a skiff right after the hearing. Of course, he's been blocked from doing that still to this day. And if there was nothing there, why would he be blocked, right? If this guy was just full of it, why wouldn't you say, sure, go tell Congress there's bodies that, so such and such, what would they care? So why are they blocking him from speaking with Congress to give them the names, the locations, all of that information, the names that he said again in the hearing? He had a list of cooperative witnesses and non-cooperative, meaning these people he just referred to in that question that are currently still working on the programs of recovering alien bodies. And they're willing to cooperate. I mean, this thing should have been game over last year, And the fact that it's not is very clear that there's something here that is being pushed back on and covered up, because otherwise it's the most simple thing. Okay, David Grusch, give us the list. Give us the cooperative witnesses that are currently working on non-human biologic programs from crashed spaceships. Bring the people in. Okay, show me. Where are you working? What do you have, how can we prosecute this? How can we investigate this? None of this has happened. It's this whole dog and pony show, right? Now, all to say, right, that I think this is good news if it's true that Nancy Mace, the one we just saw questioning Grusch, heads this hearing, because she, of all the people there, went right for it, right? She was one of the few that went right to the elephant in the room, right? Like, dude, so you're basically saying that we've been recovering alien bodies from crashed UFOs. She went right for it. So if she actually is the chair, she's going to guide and direct it in that type of a vibe, where it's like, yo, let's stop beating around the bush. What's going on here? And that's what we need. Like, cut out the BS. I understand the pushback is probably serious, like people's families getting threatened and all that. So I can't even claim to know what's going on, but at least from here in our chair here, we can know that there's something going on. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing this kind of dog and pony show that we are. And so that's really all here. I mean, that's the last I'm really going to say about the upcoming hearings, unless we get more information, like who's going to be there. We've heard Tim Burchett say last time that they tried to get the hearing, the one where Grusch, Graves, and Fravor came, which was awesome. There was supposed to be more people. And according to Tim Burchett, NASA and other elements of the Pentagon or the intelligence community stopped those people from going. So what's being covered up here? You know what I mean? Like, what is it? Move the ball forward. Gotta just go for it, And I think that, I don't know anything about her politics or anything. And, I'm not nonpartisan, independent. I think both of the political parties are corrupt. And it's all a joke anyway, ultimately. The whole two-party system, and it's basically just money is just running everything. So I don't know what she stands on other thing, but I will say that, her approach there on this UAP issue seems to be very good. And that would be very good, I think, if she heads the hearing. And also Burchett said they're not going to release the witness list this time. You hear people like Dr. Stephen Greer, who still to this day, I don't really know like how much of his work is legit versus, not. Obviously, a lot of it is legit. He's brought forward actual real witnesses, but then, he makes certain claims and says that he knows things 100%. And it's like, it's hard to just take his word for it. But he said that he's given a whole list of people. And one of the people he said was someone who currently or recently just was running the allegedly man-made UFO programs. So you get just all these questions, man. And like, apparently Jason Sands and Michael Herrera are, know Grusch, and Grusch knows them, and maybe they're part of the 40 whistleblowers. But now they're basically implying from the things that they've said, they're implying that there's a human secret space program, basically, that has been using the technology, has off-world operations. I mean, that's what those guys are basically saying. So, what's going on? And then, of course, Grusch is silent. Was supposed to speak at the SALT conference pulled out last minute, and that's when Carl Nell spoke. So all we can do is just sit here, I guess, and try to just come to rational conclusions. But that's all there for today. We're going to wrap it up there. Thank you for watching. If you got some value from this, kind of sparked your mind of anything of this UAP issue, gave you something new to look at, then it has, done its job in my eyes. And I appreciate if you can subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, because it helps, the video grow. It really does. And really, I'm only trying to grow the channel to basically be able to talk to more people that I could ask questions. There's so many times that I'm like, man, if I had this person, I would ask this follow-up question, that follow-up question. So that's my main goal. And also, yeah, just to connect with more people. If the information's helpful, which, I think I've seen that it is for people, more people getting it, the better. And the more just having these conversations in these little nodes, this YouTube channel, this whatever it is, social media, a conversation with somebody at work, a conversation with somebody at the park, we have to, that's, I think, ultimately, in a more abstract sense, metaphysical sense, it's like the consciousness of everyone has to kind of keep expanding. And the more that people talk about this and start to come to terms with it, and I think when people really do hear about the official hearings, and I know this because, for example, one of my friends, when we went camping with a group of us, go every year, we went back at the beginning of the summer, and this dude never thought about this kind of stuff, never heard of David Grusch, none of this, right? It's very skeptical, UFOs are tinfoil hat, right? And I just told him like what's going on. And by the end of the conversation, he was like, well, there's clearly something going on. I didn't know any of this. So the more and more people that can realize that, the better. And I think we should all make videos and share what we think about stuff and different information, our research. So start your own channel. But I appreciate you and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.